Good morning, I'm Father X. In this episode, we're going to talk about 6 additional solutions and actions you can take to manage the incompetence and gender bias of family court to save your kids. We'll talk about cornering the judge, the stereotypes you have to overcome, the fake laws you have to recognize, and an idea for dads in countries outside of the United States. But first, to put this in perspective, we discussed the best interests of the child in episode 5A and how the court is supposed to make decisions. In episode 5B, we discussed how the court commonly makes mistakes based on incompetence, gender bias, and Title 4D child support corruption. I follow that up with episode 5, where we talk about overcoming these common mistakes. In episode 7A, 7B, and 7C, I went into much greater detail, quoting the judge to highlight exactly how judges can execute their gender-biased agenda and how their incompetence plays out. As I wrote those episodes, I gave you some solutions for dealing with a judge, and in this episode 7D, I'll give you 6 additional solutions for you to consider. Family court and divorce court is definitely broken, but complaining doesn't save your kids. Strategizing and outmaneuvering the judge saves your kids. So let's get to it. Solution 1. Back the judge into a corner where they have to demonstrate competence and neutrality. You saw in my episodes 6B and 6D and 7A, 7B, 7C that the court constantly ruled against me during the time of temporary orders. Being denied on every single occasion was extremely frustrating. However, I advise you to create the same scenario in your case. Why? I want you to constantly put the judge in a position where they have to decide whether to treat you like an equal parent with equal rights. You'll likely have many brief appearances in front of the judge where both major and minor decisions must be made. I want you to constantly ask for equal parenting time, or ask to split issues evenly between the mother and the father. And I want you to ask the court to make decisions that are in the best interests of your child. If the judge agrees with your request, then that's a victory for you and your kids. But if the judge is going to be gender biased and only rule in favor of the mother, you should verbally object to each instance in court by saying something on the record like, I object to the court's decision because, based on the facts of our case, that decision isn't in the best interest of our child because of A, B, and C reasons. I can see how it's in the best interest of the mother, but not the child. I ask the court to reconsider and make a decision in the best interests of our child. Definitely adjust the wording of that phrase to fit your particular situation. As a general rule, you're required to verbally object in court, on the record, when the judge makes illegal decisions. So do it. And after you put the judge in this position many times, you might see a clear pattern of bias or no bias. And later, if you have to appeal the judge's final decision to a higher court, I want you to demonstrate that clear pattern of bias, where the judge consistently made temporary decisions preferential to the mother, not the child, even before a fact-finding trial took place. I never appealed my case because I won at trial, but this could be a good strategy to set you up at the appellate level, to demonstrate the judge had a pattern of bias before hearing the actual facts. I think it'll help you in your appeal to undermine the judge's decision and integrity. It'll be frustrating to be denied every time you ask for something, but I want you to go in expecting there's a significant probability that you'll be ignored and denied. If you expect to be denied, then maybe your frustration will be lower. Because the purpose of this exercise is to force the judge to demonstrate whether she is incompetent or gender biased. You're doing it for long-term strategic purposes. Solution 2. Pull apart and destroy the judge's bigoted stereotypes. A big part of my strategy involved 2 steps. 1. Tear down the judge's stereotypes. 2. Rebuild the judge's mindset based on reality. For the first step, I wrote down the gender-biased stereotypes that the judge and the mother were using or could have used. I testified as to why those didn't apply to our case. Judges are often secretive about their true thoughts. It's hard to tell what their stereotypes are because they don't announce them. So you'll sometimes have to guess as to what could possibly be inside the judge's head. For example, here are some stereotypes that I proactively sought to destroy with actual facts during my testimony. If dad drinks any alcohol, then he must be violent and unable to care for the child. If there's domestic violence, the woman must be the victim. Dad must be the one with anger management problems. Mom is 100% innocent. If mom is upset, it must mean dad did something wrong and we must rescue her. Dads only exist to have jobs and pay child support. Dads don't know how to change diapers or feed babies. Dad must have neglected the children and let mom do all the childcare. The mother's bond with the child is the only bond we need to protect and promote. This list can go on, but it's a good starting point for you. Basically, I disarmed the judge by taking away her ability to rely on these bigoted stereotypes in making her decision. I left her empty-handed. Secondly, after I tore down these stereotypes in my judge's head, I then had to rebuild my judge's mindset by teaching her about actual reality. My testimony and evidence focused on the best interest factors to show I was perfectly capable of raising our son. And I focused on demonstrating the mother's violence, anger management issues, threats, knife wielding, etc., and the risk to our son of being primarily raised by this mother. To do that, I had to make sure that I didn't testify as a raving lunatic, telling convoluted stories that nobody could understand. That's a trap many of us can easily fall into. So I presented one issue at a time. I addressed one false allegation at a time, in precise detail. And I addressed one best interest factor at a time, in precise detail. It took me 28 hours of testimony because I had to convince an uninformed and biased judge. I methodically planned and calculated my testimony and evidence to neutralize all of the incompetent and gender-biased thoughts in my judge's head and replace it all with intelligent thought about the best interests of my son. Even though I had an attorney, this was all my strategy. Don't assume lawyers know how to do this. That strategy worked for me, and maybe it'll work for you. I encourage you to get advice from multiple sources to come up with an optimal strategy for your situation. Solution 3. Highlight the fake laws. The intent of the law is to make decisions in the best interests of the child, but during my many years in court, I observed family court practitioners making bizarre decisions that don't support the best interests of the child. It's as if these family court practitioners created their own set of rules and processes that are totally disconnected from the best interests of the child. When you see that happening, it's best to highlight to the judge that their thought process doesn't achieve the best interests of the child. Just do it politely, assertively, and intelligently, not in an insulting way. And yes, that's a tough balancing act. For example, here are some fake laws that the courts seem to embrace. Fake Law 1. Before a fact-finding trial, it's okay for the judge to issue temporary orders where they ignore the facts of the case and the best interests of the child. Fake Law 2. Whoever goes to court first should get primary custody to start the proceedings. Fake Law 3. A child needs his mother, so the mother should have primary custody. Fake Law 4. To be cautious, we should rule in favor of the mother until we sort things out. Fake Law 5. During the marriage, if the parents split responsibilities and the mother was the primary childcare provider, that must mean that after a divorce, she must be the better primary custodial parent. Solution 4. Create secret affidavits. During the middle of my 3-year trial process, I wrote secret affidavits about my judge, detailing her gender-biased and bad behavior. They were typed-up letters, for my record, with dates, so it was clear when I wrote them. I had the affidavits notarized. I kept them secret for my files only. My plan was that if the judge made a final order of custody in favor of the mother, that I would file an appeal. And in my appeal, I would include these secret affidavits. I didn't want the appellate court to think that I was only accusing the judge of bad behavior because I lost. I wanted the appellate courts to know that I recognized the judge's gender bias and incompetence well before the judge made a final decision. But I won my case at trial and there was no appeal, so I don't know if this would have worked. But I want to share that plan with you because if you want to try this, The time to prepare secret affidavits is now. Also, you can use your secret affidavits in the future for any reason. For example, if your judge is running for election, what if you gave those affidavits to your judge's political opponents for them to expose the judge's bad behavior? Or if your judge is appointed, what if you gave those affidavits to the judicial committee that appoints judges? These are ways to expose incompetent and gender-biased judges. But of course, you have to consider that if a judge is aware you did this, she'll get angry with you and use that against you when making custody decisions. So it's understandable to be afraid to do this during your custody trial process. And after your custody trial process, think about the risks to you and your children if you expose the judge this way. Maybe you do it, and maybe you don't. But the more dads that do this, the better for society. Solution 5. Motion for recusal. State laws vary on this matter. Some states don't let you switch family court judges. Some states let you switch once, or sometimes you can request a judge to recuse themselves and get a new judge by asking your current judge. If the decision to switch judges is up to your current judge, you have to be careful. It's hard to tell your current judge that she's incompetent and gender biased against fathers, because she'll obviously deny it in public, even if her actions are clearly incompetent and biased. And if you embarrass her in front of her courtroom staff, then you have the legitimate fear that she'll just deny the request, get angry with you, and take it out on you during the trial. But if your state allows you to switch judges based on your own request, then you have to think about whether any other judge will be just as biased and incompetent as this one. Maybe there's a better judge in your courthouse, maybe not. So think carefully and research this matter. Solution 6. Non-US countries. Many of my viewers are from Canada, the UK, Germany, Switzerland, Australia, and other countries. I'm aware that many of you have broken family court systems too. Imagine if you took this 3-part series in episode 7 and emailed it to or shared it with your local politicians, legislators, and judges. Use an anonymous email if you have to. Tell them how broken the United States family court system is and how much of an embarrassment family court is to our citizens. Tell your leaders that it's better for your country to avoid copying the incompetent United States model. It's better to adopt practices that are actually helpful to your citizens instead of practices that are an embarrassment to your country. The United States family court system might be too big and too fragmented to fix, but your countries might have some hope. Save yourselves. These might be the darkest days of your life. They were for me. I'm making these educational videos to help you navigate this nightmare. If you subscribe, you can get updates when I post more videos. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing with your friends who are in a similar situation. If you like, subscribe, and share, it'll also help the YouTube algorithm get this message out to more fathers in our position. Also, if you find this information helpful, please support this channel so I can make more videos. You can donate via my YouTube channel's About page using PayPal or Venmo.